All right. MSNBC contributor Charlie Sykes walked a mile in our shoes yesterday, wondering aloud, what do you lead with this morning? So the question is it Mulvaney's admission of a quid pro quo in Ukraine? The G7 Trump-Doral grift? Trump's awful Syria deal? The president's apparent endorsement of ethnic cleansing? The apparent collapse of the Trump Stonewall? Rick Perry's escape? Sunderland breaking with Trump story? Elijah Cummings, Romney's dramatic floor speech on Syria? And not on Charlie's list, the admiral who led the raid to take out Osama bin Laden, saying it's time for a new person in the Oval Office as former Defense Secretary James Mattis roasts Donald Trump.
You know, there's so much to talk about. We joked for a few minutes at the top of the show. Mika likes to do that. Me, I like to get straight into the news. But there's so much going on that if somebody just woke up this morning, they might not think that yesterday was not one of the most significant news days during the Trump presidency. And I may even argue one of the most significant news days over perhaps the last decade, just in terms of volume. Mike, I want to start with you. There was so much, so many shameful acts by the president as it had to do with lining up the Kurds for ethnic cleansing, kowtowing to the Turks. But I want to start with this Mick Mulvaney confession in the White House, because it was a confession, and I will say it was like you had the Nixon tapes played out in front of the press for everyone to see, because this was the smoking gun. This was the guy we had read weeks ago had held up the aid at the direction of the President of the United States, and yesterday he admitted military aid was held up from an ally who had been invaded by Vladimir Putin in return for chasing down presidential conspiracy theories and, of course, attached, though he didn't say it, Hunter Biden.
Yeah, Joe, and when he said it, I mean, the tragic aspect of what he said is the reaction to it. And it was basically, we're not surprised. And the accelerated pace of the headlines that Mika just read, the incidents that have happened over the course of just the past few days. But, you know, I think if you're going to pick out one thing to select as like, wow, it would be the sad aspect of what's going on in the world. In 11 days in October, this October, the President of the United States has made the United States of America irrelevant in the most volatile, dangerous region in the world.
He has. Admiral Stavridis, let's move to that part of this story yesterday. The President of the United States, again, not even getting played, just trying to find any fig leaf he can to hide the fact that he's betrayed our closest allies on the battlefield. He's empowered Iran. He's empowered Putin. He's empowered Assad. He's undercut the Israelis. He's undercut the Kurds. And of course, he is the man who has reinvented ISIS.
Precisely. And, you know, a way to think of this, as I watched that press conference from Ankara yesterday, was President Erdogan and President Trump, you know, they've buried the hatchet. They buried it right in the back of the Kurds. And it's shocking to see the Kurds simply pushed in what does begin to look like ethnic cleansing. And here's a news flash. 300,000 of them are marching into the desert, and winter is coming, literally. So that is a sad day. And as Mike Barnicle just said, the knock-on effect from those tactical events are going to be felt strategically in a lack of confidence in what the United States stands for. That's a bad day for American diplomacy.
It's a bad day for American diplomacy, a bad week for American diplomacy, and unfortunately, the next president of the United States is going to be cleaning this up. In fact, we're going to be cleaning this up for 10 years because no one, Admiral, is going to believe, are they, that you can trust the word of the United States of America. Just look at ISIS. We get out of Iraq. ISIS fills that void. Then we finally go, okay, well, after they've cut off enough heads, after they've blown up enough people in Paris, after they've shot up enough people in San Bernardino, after they've had a rain, just an absolute rain of terror that I will say was so ubiquitous that my children had to be convinced every day that ISIS was not coming to their school the next day. The fear had grown and had seeped. I mean, it was shocking.
Yeah.
And then Barack Obama and some pretty smart military people started a plan. Donald Trump continued it. And here we are, Donald Trump doing, I would argue, something even worse than Barack Obama escaping Iraq, escaping Syria in a much worse situation.
Indeed, and let me make a military point here. This was not a huge deployment of troops. When I commanded the mission in Afghanistan as Supreme Allied Commander, we had 150,000 troops there. In Iraq at peak, we had 185,000 troops. This was 2,000 to 3,000 special forces. And it's a mistake, like the Dutch boy pulling his finger out of the dike, to let that region just fall into chaos, give Iran an open sweep of turf that goes from Baghdad through Damascus to the Mediterranean Sea, all for pulling out 2,000 troops. You know, I get it on Middle East fatigue in the country, but this was leverage. This was a small investment that leveraged tens of thousands of allies, partners, and friends. This is penny wise, pound foolish, but worst of all is that strategic knock-on effect. Last comment, I've been thinking a lot about character lately as opposed to leadership. Leadership is how we influence others. It's a big door. But those big doors of leadership swing on the small hinges of character. And when we demonstrate a lack of character, in disloyalty, in lack of vision, in walking away, the knock-on effects are going to be significant.
Yep.
They will be, and the real tragedy of this is that the Pentagon, our smartest, the best and brightest men and women, figured out a way to learn from the 17 years of mistakes that the United States of America made because of some bad mistakes by politicians, and figured out how to have a small enough footprint that was sustainable, that could do so many things that were so strategically important to the United States of America, the West, and the world. And we take those people out. I want to move to another issue. We have so many issues, but Jonathan Lemire, thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.